Good morning. It's good to see you today. Hope you're having a good day. Thanks for joining us for a study from God's Word. Come on with us to the Gospel of Matthew. On Thursdays, we usually look at either a miracle or a parable. We're starting to get into more parables. And the one we're going to look at today, we're going to look at the parable of the wheat and the tares in the book of Matthew. So come on with us to Matthew chapter 13. Appreciate you being with us today. In Matthew 13, at verse 24, the nice thing about this parable is that this is another one that Jesus actually explains it for us. So the disciples, well, we'll get to it here in a second, then we'll make a point. But in Matthew chapter 13 and verse 24, let's just read the parable itself. Says, another parable he put forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, then the tares also appeared. So the servants of the owner came and said to him, Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares? He said to them, An enemy has done this. The servants said to him, Do you want us then to go and gather them up? But he said, No, lest while you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at the time of harvest, I will say to the reapers, First gather together the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. Then we have another parable, but then in verse 36, when Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, his disciples came to him, saying, Explain to us the parable of the tares in the field. And I just I appreciate that just because the disciples say we don't understand it. And a lot of times we don't understand things either, needless to say. And the Lord explains the parable. So help the disciples out, helps us out as well. Back to the explanation. Verse 37, he answered and said to them, He who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seeds are the sons of the kingdom, but the tares are the sons of the wicked one. The enemy who sowed them is the devil, the harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. Therefore, as the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of this age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all things that offend and those who practice lawlessness. Will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. So, what points can we make about it? And it's interesting because this is right on the tail end of the parable of the sower. And it's interesting since he's using the same analogy of a sower and seed and plants and farm life. It's interesting to see some of the differences. And one thing we need to see is the field is the world. And I'll tell you right now, I have made the mistake before of applying this parable to the church and using it to illustrate that within the church there will be good and bad. Within the church there will, believe it or not, there are hypocrites in the church and things like that. That is a misuse of this parable. And to look at it, we need to make sure that we see what he said. The field, verse 38, is the world. Don't use the parable of the tares. Don't use this parable to justify allowing sin to continue on in the church. Now, certainly there are other passages we could look at. There's one in in Timothy, where it talks about some men's sins are clearly evident, others the Lord's going to have to sort it out, frankly. So I think the principle still stands. But within this parable, Jesus is not saying, he's not saying within this parable, within the church, there will be wheat and tares. That's not what he's saying. It may be the case, but that's not what he's saying. The field is the world. And we need to make sure that we recognize that to start with. Maybe I should not have phrased it quite this way, but did you see that the seed is not the word? Look back in the passage when he explains it, verse 38 again, the good seeds are the sons of the kingdom, but the tares are the sons of the wicked one. Now it may be, and you might go back to the parable of the sower, as it talks about, because within the parable of the sower, the seed is the word. But as you have the seed being planted and it grows and it produces a crop, some hundredfold, some 60-fold. You have things like that. So you might think about generationally that the word comes first, but within this parable, the seed is not directly the word. It may be indirectly. And I understand we're talking about its effect on our lives, but I just think it's interesting that the passage that Jesus says the seed, whether it's the good or the bad, it is the sons of the kingdom, or as he says, it is the sons of the wicked one. So I thought that was interesting, and I wanted to be sure to mention that. But also, I want you to consider the devil's ways and think about just how devilish the devil is. Sounds silly to say it like that, but just think about it. After you have the field is the world, verse 38. Verse 39, the enemy who sowed them is the devil. And I tell you what I wanted to do actually, let me get over here with you. Go back earlier in the account. Back earlier in the account, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field, verse 24. And these four words right here, verse 25, but while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. I want you to think about the devil's ways and think about just how devilish this is. And I really want you to think about what the devil's doing and think about just how horrible it is. The devil operates a lot of times when it's when people are not looking. While men slept, the devil did this. Also, I want you to think about, why would you do something like this? Here's the figure of a person going on someone else's farm, going into someone else's field after they have sown good seed. The person goes into the field and sows bad seed. Why would a person do that? It's the good seed that produces the crop. The tares, it doesn't. It's weeds. Why would a person do that? And to think about it, some people are just what the devil is destructive. And I don't know another way to put it. The devil just wants to destroy. That's what the devil wants to do. The devil just wants to mess things up. He just wants to tear things up. It is not as though as he goes out and he is seeking whom he may devour, it's not like he enjoys our company. He does not enjoy our company. Think about the demons when in the account of Legion, when the demons begged Jesus not to go into the abyss. The demons don't want to go there either. Think about that. The demons don't want to be punished in hell. And the devil himself is going to be cast into hell. It's not like he's going to be king of hell. Okay, that's not what's going on here. The devil is going to be punished. That's what hell is. It is going to be punishment. But to think about the devil and what he's like, he doesn't enjoy anybody's company. That's not what he is. He's destructive. He wants to destroy. Now, you might ask the question, why? And frankly, I'm not sure if I can really answer that. Some people just like to destroy. Some people they're just that way. The devil, why would you sneak onto someone else's field and sow bad seed? That's just how he is, how he operates. What is the difference between the wheat and the tares? Let's look back in our passage again and look in the account. Verse 26, but when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, then the tares also appeared. What's the difference between the wheat and the tares? What's the difference between the good grain and the bad? I think the difference is there in verse 26. We're talking about a crop. What is the Lord of the harvest looking for? He's looking for fruit. The Lord of harvest is looking for a harvest. There, that's your profound thought for the day. The Lord of the harvest is looking for a harvest. What do tares, what do weeds not produce? They do not produce the fruit that the Lord is looking for. That's the difference. Now that helps us because you can tell in the account, one of the points that we can make within that passage, an enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. When that first happened, and I understand it's a parable, but just bear with me. When that first happened and both seeds were in the ground, could you tell where the good and the bad were? No. As both just barely started to poke up out of the ground, could you tell the difference between the good and the bad? No. It was only when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop that you could tell the difference between the good and the bad. Now that helps us because sometimes we are not sure if we're doing what's right. We need to examine ourselves. We need to examine ourselves and we need to be looking for the same thing that the Lord of the harvest is looking for. He's looking for fruit, he's looking for the crop. That's how we can tell the difference between the wheat and the tares, and that's how we can make sure, hopefully, that we are on the side of the Lord, the sons of the kingdom. Anyway, just a little bit, and within this parable, before we close up, I think it is also a picture of the Lord's patience. Sometimes we are like the servants of the man, and we say, "Do you want us to go tear him out?" And the Lord, in His wisdom, says, "No, let them both grow together, lest you uproot the good with the bad." And you see the figure of the Lord's patience, and you see the purpose or the reason for the Lord's patience, I should say. And the Lord knows how difficult judgment is going to be. And in His wisdom, He is doing it the best way possible. You might think about that as well. But just a little bit of our daily bread, just to get us going today, discerning between the wheat and the weeds, the wheat and the tares. Hope you have a good day today. Appreciate you tuning in. Hope you tune in tomorrow for another study from God's Word. Thanks for being with us today.